Hey guys, this is Paulina, and in this grammar video we're going to learn about relative clauses. So, what are relative clauses? Relative clauses give information about something or someone in the main clause. In this video, we will learn about defining relative clauses, non-defining relative clauses, relative clauses and prepositions, and finally, we will learn about relative adverbs. So, defining relative clauses contain information which is essential for understanding of the whole sentence. For example, the man who normally comes to clean our windows is on holiday this month. There's only one clock that works properly in this flat. A widow is a woman whose husband has died. In each case, the relative clause identifies which person or thing is being talked about. No commas are required either at the beginning or the end of the relative clause when we use defining relative clauses. That can be used instead of who for people and which for things, particularly in spoken English. Please be aware of the fact that whom is more formal than who. The relative pronoun can be omitted in a defining relative clause if it is the object of the verb in the relative clause. So you can say, I'm enjoying the book which you lent me, I'm enjoying the book that you lent me, or I'm enjoying the book you lent me. The relative pronoun can be omitted if it is the subject of the verb in the relative clause. That's the shop assistant who that served me the last time I came here. Non-defining relative clauses contain information which is not essential for our understanding of the sentence. We can identify which person or thing is being talked about without the information in the relative clause. Their new house, which has 5 bedrooms and a games room, is much larger than their previous one. At the party, she spoke to Mr. Peterson, whose father owned the company she worked for. Let's have a look at some features of non-defining relative clauses. Commas are required both at the beginning and at the end of the relative clause, except when the end of the relative clause is also the end of the sentence. Then you use the full stop. That cannot be used in place of who or which. Okay? That cannot be used in place of who or which. So, my 2 pieces of advice for you are, if you don't know if a relative clause is defining or non-defining, check if there are commas. If there are commas, it's definitely a non-defining relative clause. If there are no commas, well, it's going to be a defining relative clause. Remember that in non-defining relative clauses, that cannot be used in place of who or which. Relative pronouns in non-defining relative clauses cannot be omitted from non-defining relative clauses. Her maths teacher, who or whom everyone in the class adored, announced that he was leaving the school. Also, non-defining relative clauses are more common in written English. Which can be used in non-defining relative clauses to refer to the whole of the main clause. Have a look at this example here. No one phoned him on his birthday, which made him feel rather depressed. Now let's have a look at relative clauses and prepositions. Here we've got 3 points we're going to talk about. First of all, prepositions usually come at the end of defining and non-defining relative clauses. In defining relative clauses, the relative pronoun is usually omitted. The town I grew up in has changed a lot since I left. So instead of saying the town in which I grew up has changed a lot since I left, you can just say the town I grew up in has changed a lot since I left. In non-defining relative clauses, the relative pronoun is never omitted. Keith Rolfe, who I used to work with, lives in Paris now. The second important point is that in more formal English, prepositions often come before the relative pronouns whom for people and which for things, in which case the pronoun cannot be omitted. We shall be visiting the room in which Turner painted some of his greatest works. The head waiter, to whom we addressed our complaint, was not particularly helpful. And now it's time to have a look at relative adverbs: where, when, and why. Where, when, and why can be used in relative clauses after nouns which refer to a place, where, a time, when, or a reason, why. Where has the meaning in, at which. So let's have a look at an example in a defining and non-defining clause. They've booked a week in the campsite where we stayed last year. She's in Southlands Hospital, where you were born. When has the meaning on, in which, and can be omitted or replaced by that in defining relative clauses. Do you remember that day when we went to Rhyl and it snowed? Or do you remember the day that we went to Rhyl and it snowed? Or in non-defining clauses, we're going on holiday in September when most people are back at work. So again, my piece of advice is, if you struggle differentiating between a defining and non-defining clause, always use the WH relative adverb. Don't use that. And finally, why has the meaning for which and can be omitted or replaced by that in defining relative clauses. The reason why I'm phoning is to ask you for Tina's address. Or the reason that I'm phoning is to ask you for Tina's address. And that's everything for today. To create this video, I've used materials from the grammar reference from your book. If you want to, you can have a look at it again. It's on page 214 in your book. The music comes from the website called Bound Sound. And if you found this video helpful, please give me thumbs up or leave a positive comment. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to ask them in class, but you can also write your questions in the comments. I'll see you in class. Bye!